Hey, it's Sam, and I'm making this video to talk about the North Indian and South Indian charts. If you study with me, you know that I use the South Indian chart, and I know that I have several students, quite a few, who learned with the North Indian chart, and there's this idea that it's kind of like the same. Well, there's this chart, there's that chart, and they're kind of, one is interchangeable, it's just what you're used to. And I'm making this video to kind of dispel that a little bit, because there is a big difference in the two charts and a kind of visual bias that comes when you use one over the other. If you're studying with me, you need to start transitioning or totally transition into using South Indian chart, and I'm going to explain why here. And I actually think it's a far superior chart to the North Indian anyway, and I'm going to explain why. The first reason is because the South Indian chart is an actual representation of the sky itself. You imagine that the Earth is in the middle of that circle of squares, and that's visually accurate with what's happening in the sky. Literally. And you might say, well, but the diamond chart, you could just imagine the Earth was in the middle of that. But the reason the diamond chart, the North Indian chart, is not accurate is because the houses always change. Or, I'm sorry, because the signs always change in that chart. And that's not the case with the South Indian. What I'm saying is that the South Indian chart is accurate with the sky because the zodiac signs never change position. They're always where they are. Now, the reason this is important is because you need to start seeing the zodiac the way I see it, if you're going to study with me, which is as this holistic matrix. The zodiac is not, and I say the zodiac, I mean the zodiac signs, not houses, the signs. The North Indian chart is a house chart. The first house is always at the top. The angles are in the diamond and all like that. This is why there's such a strong bias to putting so much importance on the angles in that North Indian chart, and why it's hard to get the concept of the planets as house rulers and these things that I stress so much in my teaching, because you're not seeing this visually over and over again. So many times I have to beat it into my students' heads who are used to the North Indian chart that it's more important what the planet rules, not the house the planet is in. Because they're so used to looking at the North Indian chart and saying, oh, Mercury's in the third house. Well, that's important, but it's more important that Mercury rules the first and fourth house or something. And the rulerships and the chart as a matrix and a mandala of cosmic energy is much more easily seen from the South Indian chart, because the signs always stay in the same place, and that's accurate with the sky. The signs are always in that place. And the thing that happens when you start getting acclimated to the South Indian chart is you automatically start seeing the spatial relationship between, the fact that in the corners, these are the signs ruled by Mercury and Jupiter. Mercury rules the upper right and the lower right, and Jupiter rules the upper left and the lower left, in Gemini, Virgo, Pisces, Sagittarius. Venus and Mars rule the ones next to that. Venus rules, Taurus and Libra, which are right next to the Mercury-ruled signs, and you start to see the relationship, the opposites, how Mercury rules signs opposite Jupiter, Venus rules signs opposite Mars, Saturn rules the signs opposite the Sun and the Moon, and your mind starts to acclimate to this mandala. This is why you hear me talk about this holistic mandala, this holistic approach all the time. It's not accidental. It's because I've been looking at the South Indian chart for so long. That's why I automatically, I had to lick my fingers to get the snap because it's a little dry. That's why I automatically recognize the planets the houses rule from each ascendant. Or I'm sorry, the houses each planet rules from each ascendant. Because I've been looking at that. It's burned into my mind. I know that every time there's a planet in the upper right hand box, upper right, it's in Gemini. It's always that sign, and the signs are more foundational than the houses. Again, this is why there's an incorrect bias, at least with the method that I use. This, when you use the North Indian chart, when you use the South Indian chart, you are looking at the sky as this holistic matrix where each planet rules a different place from each other. So you automatically know, anytime you see an ascendant, which planets are ruling which houses, because it just gets burned into your mind. That's why I'm able to understand this so quickly, and my most advanced students are able to approach the holistic zodiac with much more ease. You can really tell, like for instance, when you start doing relationship astrology and synastry and you start laying charts next to each other, again, because the signs are always in the same place, so you can see the conjunctions between two charts so much more easily. When you use the South Indian chart, when you use the North Indian chart, you're looking at houses, like you have Jupiter in the 3rd house and this other person has Jupiter in the 3rd house, but that has nothing to do with synastry. Synastry is about signs, one planet in the same section of the zodiac as the other. Again, you have to understand the zodiac itself is foundational, not the houses. Houses are secondary. Once you get an ascendant, then you get the houses. But the signs are foundational. The zodiac signs, the rashis, are foundational. Like I say, it's especially powerful when you talk about synastry. When you lay one chart on top of another to see the relationship that people have with each other and what buttons get pushed. You need to see the signs. You need to see that Jupiter is in Scorpio for one person and the other person has the moon in Scorpio. Not that it's the 3rd house, or that one person has Jupiter in the 3rd house, like let's say that Scorpio is the 3rd house, and the other person has the other person has that moon in the 8th house. Let's say you would never see that that's synastry at that point, because you're looking at houses. You would never see you would never see that it's actually the same sign, because you're looking at house chart, and the houses don't have anything to do with synastry. So again, especially if you're studying with me in my certification courses, and if you want to learn this holistic approach to astrology, you need to be looking at the South Indian chart, and I definitely think it's a superior chart. The only advantage to the North Indian is that the houses are already set for you, but that's not hard. It's not hard to see the houses. In the South Indian chart as well, the houses are in the angles, 1, 4, 7, 10 are angular, triangle. It's really not that hard. But the problem is that the signs change constantly. You have to look for that little number to see which sign you're looking at, which is not foundational to the sky. No matter where you are, that zodiac is fixed. The rashis are fixed. They're where they are. They don't change, just like the South Indian chart. Houses change based on the ascendant. But again, the North Indian chart has it where the houses are fixed, which is not accurate with literally what we're looking at. So again, it's not just I'm used to looking at North Indian. I get it's not an equal equation. It's not equal. Everything isn't equal all the time. And I'm just saying that I think the South Indian is a superior chart because it's astronomically correct. And it's not just astronomically correct, but the information and the visual bias that comes as a result of looking at the South Indian chart is far more accurate to what is really going on and how to do astrology at a very high level. How to see the planets as house rulers first, how to feel their nature and feel that holistic zodiac, that Leo is the place where Mercury rules the 2nd and 11th house, Venus rules the 3rd and 10th house, Mars rules the 4th and 9th house. And see, I can pull that off the top of my head very easily because in my mind I'm visualizing that matrix. If I'm trying to use the North Indian chart, I can't do it. And I don't have these things memorized. I have to do it. When you hear me do that, I'm doing it in real time. Sagittarius is a place where Venus rules the 6th and 11th house. Sun rules the 9th house. Saturn rules the 2nd and 3rd house. Jupiter rules the 1st and 4th house. Mars rules the 5th and 12th house. So I'm doing that off the top of my head because I'm visualizing the South Indian chart and that point of Sagittarius measured against where I know the other planets rule. So that comes once you start to grok that South Indian chart. So you should start looking at the South Indian chart much more exclusively.